Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is pretty simple. Cut through all the noise, grab the key insights, the surprising stuff from a bunch of sources, and get it straight to you. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that feels more needed than ever, but somehow harder to actually do, finding a sustainable balance. We're focusing specifically on a conversational source titled From Hustle to Harmony.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, I think, is we're not just boiling down some academic paper on productivity. We're actually looking at a conversation, how real people talked about moving from that pressure, that constant hustle, towards, harmony. Our goal is to pull out the main ideas, maybe some sticking points, about slowing down intentionally, straight from how people discussed it.
That title alone, From Hustle to Harmony, it really sets it up, doesn't it? It captures that core conflict perfectly. You've got the hustle on one side, always online, always available, feeling like your worth is tied to how much you churn out. And then there's harmony, which, as we'll get into, sounds less like just taking a break and more about being deliberate. Okay, so let's get into it. Where do we start? We need to define the hustle first, right? Based on these conversations, what does it actually mean today? It's got to be more than just working late.
Well, yeah, the discussion in the source material really suggested the modern hustle is. It's sneakier than just having a tough boss. It's fundamentally about what they call cognitive debt. The people talking basically define the hustle as this constant internalized feeling that you have to equate your self-worth with nonstop measurable output. The real kicker seems to be that mental habit of never feeling like you're actually done with anything because you're always juggling notifications, thinking about the next demand.
Cognitive debt. That rings a bell. We've all felt it, I think, but putting a name on it, that's powerful. It's that constant background hum of feeling behind, right? Even if you objectively got a lot done. I think one person in that conversation actually admitted they tried scheduling downtime, like proper relaxation, but then felt they had to justify it afterward, almost like needing a productivity score for chilling out.
Exactly. That story perfectly illustrates what the source called productivity theater. Performing busyness, even just for yourself, it often leads to just constant partial attention on everything. And this led to a really big question they wrestled with in the conversation. Is this hustle mainly external pressure, the market, social media expectations? Or is it mostly internal now, something we've just absorbed, where the fear of not replying instantly feels worse than the quality of the reply itself?
That makes sense. The source seemed to lean towards the internal part being the real damage dealer, didn't it? Because that's the bit you can't escape. You can turn off your phone, sure, but you can't easily swish off that anxiety, that fear of missing out, or maybe, like you said, fear of looking like you're dropping the ball professionally.
Absolutely. And what was fascinating, I thought, was how the participants seemed to conclude that unless you tackle that internal anxiety head on, that gut feeling that stopping equals failing, then no external boundary, no rule you set is really going to hold up for long. If the root problem is inside you, the fix has to start with a mental shift.
Okay, right. That leads us perfectly into the how, the transition phase. If the issue is internalized pressure and this cognitive debt thing, what concrete steps, what mental shifts did the conversation offer? Practical things to start moving towards harmony. Setting boundaries sounds good, but they often crumble. What about dealing with, other people's expectations? The pushback.
Yeah, this is where the source got really practical, which was great. The big theme was something like intentional subtraction, meaning you have to consciously, actively decide what not to do, what to remove, not just manage more stuff. And the most specific advice wasn't just set boundaries, but actually plan ahead for how you'll respond when people inevitably push against those new boundaries.
Okay, give us an example of that pre-planning, because that's where I think a lot of us fall down. You make a rule like no work texts after 8 p.m., then someone texts you at 8:05 with something urgent.
Right. So one strategy that got a lot of airtime in the discussion was this thing someone called the 3X rule. They decided they'd only check work email at 3 specific set times each day. No more constant checking or instant replies. And the pre-planned response, say, to that urgent-sounding text after hours, it wasn't okay looking now. It was a standard ready-to-go message. Something like, got it, thanks. I'm offline for personal time now, but I've noted this and we'll tackle it first thing at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Ah, that's clever. It takes the thinking out of it in the moment, which is when you're vulnerable. And it also kind of trains people around you about your new way of working.
Totally. And connecting this back to the bigger idea, the source really hammered home that slowing down isn't about laziness or doing less overall necessarily. It's about focusing your limited energy more effectively. It means consciously rejecting multitasking. The conversation actually framed multitasking not as being efficient, but as basically doing a poor job on several things at once, which just adds to that cognitive debt. The advice was literally to block out time for one single thing. Even if that one thing is just, say, 5 minutes of mindless scrolling, at least it's an intentional 5 minutes.
It's interesting that the conversation focused on these quite structured, almost hardline tactics first, like time blocking and rules, rather than immediately jumping to things like meditation or, journaling. Seems more grounded for someone deep in the hustle.
It does feel more practical initially, yeah. But they didn't ignore the internal battle either. The source noted that often the hardest boundary wasn't the digital one, like the email rule. It was battling that intense FOMO, the fear of missing out, that worry that switching off means you'll become irrelevant or miss some huge career break. One person shared how they'd find themselves instinctively reaching for their phone during a planned 20-minute walk without the phone realizing just how physically wired the habit was.
Wow. So the goal, Harmony, it isn't just about ticking off a to-do list differently. It's about achieving a particular mental state through this intentional subtraction stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the destination then, the payoff. After doing the hard work of shifting the mindset and setting these boundaries, how did the conversation describe harmony? Is it just like feeling calm?
No, the source is really clear on this. Harmony is not the same as being on vacation, and it's definitely not laziness. They described harmony more as a state of integrated living. And the key feature was a drastically reduced cognitive load. It is about finding balance, yes, but the tangible result people talked about was better mental clarity and actually having the bandwidth for deeper focus, whether that's work or relationships.
Reduced cognitive load. I like that phrase much better than just work-life balance. It feels more technical, more specific. It means your brain isn't constantly trying to juggle 80 different open tabs in the background.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. They contrasted working from a place of reaction, which is the hustle mode, versus working from a place of intention. That's harmony. The conversation used a pretty powerful analogy for this, thinking about your time and energy like, say, high-quality fuel for an engine. The hustle is like constantly dumping cheap, low-grade fuel into a performance car. Sure, you might move fast in bursts, but you burn out, sputter, and need constant, inefficient fixing.
And harmony is choosing the premium fuel, being deliberate. So maybe the 50 hours you do work are genuinely focused and productive, instead of 70 scattered anxious hours that leave you drained. There's a specific example in the conversation about creativity, wasn't there, that really highlighted the outcome?
Yes, exactly. The source pointed out that intentional downtime, like that scheduled 20-minute walk without the phone distraction, actually lets your brain do its background processing, consolidating things, making connections. Participants reported their best ideas, those aha moments for tricky problems, rarely happened when they were actively hustling. They usually popped up during those planned moments of deliberate, intentional non-productivity.
So it reframes downtime. It's not just about recovering from work. It's actually a crucial part of the work cycle itself. It stops being about escaping work and starts being about maintaining the whole system so the work you do is better, and you can keep doing it. The conversations seem to suggest the ultimate point of harmony is managing your energy well enough, that you have enough left over for the other important stuff, health, family, personal interests, without feeling like work has sucked you dry.
Exactly. It shifts work from being the be-all and end-all to being just one integrated part of a fuller life. The focus changes from just measuring what you got done to considering how present and focused you were while doing it.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up this deep dive into these conversations. It sounds like the key shift from hustle to harmony really boils down to intentionality and tackling that internal anxiety. The hustle is marked by that constant connection, feeling overwhelmed, that cognitive debt, and linking your value to how fast you respond. Harmony, on the other hand, is this state of living with more integration, achieved by actively subtracting the not essential, setting clear boundaries with pre-planned responses. And the big result is that reduced cognitive load.
Yeah, and this whole framework feels immediately useful for you listening right now.
Yeah.
If you recognize that feeling of being constantly drained or maybe caught in that productivity theater, look at the really practical stuff from the conversation. Maybe trying that 3X rule for checking messages, or just acknowledging that uncomfortable feeling when you disconnect and realizing that feeling is the real thing you need to work on managing.
It makes the goal feel less like some impossible lifestyle change and more about concrete actions, doesn't it? It puts the control back in your court by focusing on what you can choose to stop doing starting today.
Which brings us neatly to that final thought we want to leave you with. If real harmony isn't defined by doing less work, but by bringing intention to everything you do. Then take a look at your schedule for tomorrow. Where are you maybe spending the most energy just performing busyness, that productivity theater? Appearing busy, but not creating real value. And what's one intentional subtraction you could make right now to start reclaiming that energy and space?
That is the perfect question to chew on as you decide consciously where your energy goes next. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into navigating between hustle and harmony. We'll catch you on the next one.